A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening and for watching Smart24 TV. My name is Anthony Sebale and we do drive your business. Welcome to another edition of The Point, and on this show we analyze, of course, discussions that are usually locked up in the boardrooms and bring them to your viewership and get to, of course, find solutions to some of the loopholes probably we find in some of these discussions. Now, today, the car importation business is one of the most lucrative in the country and one that has attracted so many investments and investors at large. However, most recently, there has been contention in the issue of importation of used cars in Uganda. And these motor vehicles have previously been a source of confusion, especially amongst the taxpayers and the Uganda Revenue Authority in regard especially to their valuation. Now, this discussion is going to be broadened, and we have a guest here with me whom we are going to break down this topic. But let me first give you a preamble of what the situation currently looks like. Now, on one hand, the taxpayers that use these cars, or that actually buy used cars and other used items imported into Uganda, should always be valued, saying this should always be valued using the old method called the transaction value method. And this method looks at the value of the car. However, Uganda Revenue Authority is coming up with another method, and this is the fallback method of getting to calculate the cost of the taxation. But also, there have been issues of importing used cars, especially regarding the age limit, on what age limit should actually be observed for these cars. Among those issues, and a couple of other issues, is what we are going to discuss today. And joining me on set is none other than Mr. Ayebare Marvin. He is the public secretary, the publicity secretary of the Association Motor Dealers. And we have him here today to give us a view. He is a dealer himself and also publicity secretary of this association. You're most welcome, Mr. Marvin.
Anthony, and to the viewership, it's always an honor to be before you.
Yes.
How's Smart doing?
Smart is great. Smart is great. And definitely people like you keep us moving, because we believe in business in Uganda. We believe in investment. We believe in moving forward and growing our economy together.
Yes.
Definitely business has to be good. But Mr. Marvin, tell me about the car dealership business so far. How has it been going, especially in the year 2023, before we even talk about the issues of taxation and all?
Thank you, Anthony. Again, to our viewership, it's an honor to be before you and discuss motor vehicle principles and business. In relation to your question, like every other sector, the motor vehicle industry is picking up. You do know we are all coming from the COVID pandemic. Business is not as usual, but we must say that it's better than it was before. You've looked at the state of our economy. It's been discussed in various forums, and this also has an effect on our industry as well. Nonetheless, we remain compliant. We remain committed to developing the country as well. And so we are ever struggling every other day to stay in the business, to maintain it. I must say we have some data of some of our membership that have left the business and no longer part of us. But entirely as an industry, we're still going strong and still trying to hold on.
Yeah.
Yes, Anthony.
Well, interesting. Let's get to talk about the big animal in the room right now, the taxation. Take us through, first of all, what the taxation is like for imported cars. As an importer, what is the series of taxes that you actually get to pay to this point that now we are arguing about what you want as taxes and what actually URA is targeting? Because, first of all, we have to look with pity on URA, because it's working for a government which needs revenue. And all they need is to widen the base, right? And all you guys need is to make cars more affordable so you can sell more. So tell us about how it's been going with the taxation in the car business.
Well, cars are like every other commodity. We are subject to taxation. And if you remember some bit of your economics, there are various methodologies of taxation. The elephant in the room, as you call it, I think you're referring to the recent ruling in the case of URA versus Testimony Motors. Just a brief understanding of where it came from. Testimony Motors did import a motor vehicle, and at the point of valuation, they wanted to use the invoice value of purchase to clear their taxes. And then they were given another value by URA, okay, which was higher than what the purchase price was. And so I think Testimony Motors decided to go to court and have court look into the matter. I think it's a battle that's been on for the last 10 years, and eventually, I think just this month, the court made its ruling, and to the effect that the valuation method that URA used in that case was ultra vires, meaning it was a bit not right in that particular instance. Now, there are various methodologies of taxation. Let me just get you up to speed to where we are right now. Previously, maybe 10, 15 years ago, if you imported a car, URA would allow you to present your documentation in relation to that motor vehicle and say, hey guys, look, I bought this car at $5,000 and so my taxes should be based on the invoice value that I used to purchase. Now, URA's argument was that implementation of this was a bit difficult. Why? Because some unscrupulous Ugandans decided to abuse the system. And by abuse, I mean they made fake invoices, fake TT copies, fake bill of ladings. Everything was fake such that they are able to get a lower value. Now, when URA felt, mark my words, that they were losing a lot of revenue through these unscrupulous dealings, they decided to come up with a valuation methodology through what we now call or refer to as a motor vehicle value guideline. How does this work? URA has a very big booklet that has typically every car model you can think of. And even if you imported a car that's not in that value guideline, they go ahead and add it to this value guideline. Yeah. So typically now, if Anthony, you are to import a vehicle, they would refer to the value guideline that they have created in order to do your valuation. Now, Testimony Motors ruling, the judgment in that case throws a spanner in the works, because they're saying, no, we should be able to use the purchase value, the transactional methodology of taxation. So now that's the elephant in the room, if I'm to borrow what you are saying. That, okay, which system now are we going to adopt? What are the pros and cons? How do we implement this vis-a-vis that? Which system is going to take precedence over the other? Those are discussions and questions that now have to be answered. It's unfortunate that we don't have anybody from URA here to share that with us, but I guess that's something they will have to communicate to the public as regards to going forward, basing on the judgment that has been passed in the courts of law of Uganda. How then are they going to assess taxes for you and me who are trying to pay for a motor vehicle? Yes.
Oh, interesting. If I understand what you just explained, the taxes before were determined by exactly how much the buyer bought the car.
The transactional value. And that's why I shared with you an example, yes, that if I bought my car at $5,000, yeah, all I had to do was present to URA the requisite paperwork, showing that I did purchase this car indeed at $5,000. Yeah. And so the tax calculation, the tax payable, was calculated on the basis of that $5,000, your documentation, yeah, as equating to $5,000. But what URA has done now is that they've created a guideline of their own. And they say a premium is this.
So
Subaru is this.
On their guideline.
So now they don't go to your transactional, yes, value.
The transactional value.
They don't care if you bought it at $5,000. If in their guideline, wow, it's $7,000, wow, you will have to pay $7,000. If their value guideline is $3,000 and you bought it at $5,000, you will still pay $3,000. So that's where we stand at the moment.
I don't know if I don't see it the way you see it, but I see that as quite unfair. I have seen cars online, for example, a Toyota Hilux in Thailand and a Toyota Hilux in Dubai, same cars, same version, the same capacity,
Yes.
different prices.
Yes.
Absolutely different prices. Now, if you come and say you're taxing me the same way as someone importing from another country or from another, isn't that quite unfair?
It has always been a contention, the methodology of valuation of a used commodity. You see, I could have a 2015 Hilux. Let's use your example. I could have a 2015 Hilux, let's say 100,000 kilometers on it. And you could have a 2022 Hilux, 200,000 kilometers on it. What is the basis of valuation? Because mechanically, the 2015 probably at 100,000 kilometers is better sound, a better sound machine than a 2022 at 200,000 kilometers. So the question has always been, and the contention has always been, how do you value a used commodity? How do you attach a value to it? What is the basis that you use? And that's why you are deciding, no, let's come up with a fixed value guideline, which is what you're trying to say. Then doesn't it create some unfairness or iniquity in the administration of tax? Because then, how do you justify to me that the 2022, which is in worse sound condition, should pay less taxes because maybe it's newer than in 2015 in a better condition? So I'd like to believe that URA has one of the best human resource management systems, and all the officers there are the better equipped economists or analysts or tax collectors to come up with the best methodology of, which is still fair and equitable to all Ugandans. But these questions remain unanswered, and so we're waiting to see what URA decides to do going forward.
On the issue of cost of the car here in Uganda, when it comes to dealers, there's the cost of the car, then there's the inspection cost, and then there's the insurance cost, and then you have the freight, right? And all these are at different levels. I remember a story where UNBS was actually doing this inspection in Mombasa, and that changed, and they said, no, we need to go to Japan. If the car is from Japan, we inspect it from Japan, and by the time it comes to Uganda, it's already inspected. Yes. And now, whose costs are those when it comes to you, the dealers? Do you push the cost to the buyer, or there's a way you manage the cost and then subsidize the price for the buyer here in Uganda?
Anthony, have you never asked yourself why cars are very expensive?
In Uganda?
In Uganda. I mean, you will go on the internet, you will go anywhere else and look at a car, $2,000, and getting it on the road in Uganda will be $8,000. Yes. Why? Because we are a business. We cannot shield or bear these costs. For as long as these costs are put on us, we have to factor them in the cost of the commodity. And so that's why you find that your car prices keep shooting up. They never shoot down. The inspection you're talking about is pre-expert verification of conformity. That's PVOC in short. PVOC is a requirement of the standards law in Uganda that seeks to limit the importation of substandard commodities. So we've had a number of back and forth with the responsible body, UNBS, but as we speak, we currently settled at a position where all motor vehicles, irrespective of where they're imported from, have to undergo a pre-export verification of conformity to ensure that the standards that are required in Uganda are, all these vehicles conform to that. So UNBS did sign some MOUs with some working partners in Japan, in UK, in name it. So when we buy these vehicles, we have to take them first before they are allowed to come into the country. We have to take them first to these service providers. The inspection is done, and then they're allowed to come. If you, however, do not do that, then you are, there's a penalty that you have to pay, which is about 15% of the tax value of that vehicle. So you find that the math does not make sense if you're to import a vehicle without inspecting it. So the system now that has been adopted by most importers is to actually have the inspection done and bring roadworthy vehicles into the country.
Wow, that's interesting. So actually it worked. It's better to inspect from there.
It doesn't make sense for you to bring a car here and then it fails inspection. What do we do with all these cars that will fail inspection? So to look at, when you look at the operation flow of business, if you look at the value chain, it then makes sense to have, and that's the entire essence of the law, that we shouldn't have substandard commodities come into the country. And that's why we want them inspected there. If they fail inspection, then don't bring the car at all. Take it back to your supplier and ask for another vehicle. You get it? So we are working with the authorities to ensure that the goods, the car that you, Anthony, buy or I buy is a standard good that takes into concern your health, your safety, durability, maintenance, and all that. So basically, every car you find in the bond right now is a very good quality vehicle.
Let's talk about documentation. How is the framework of documentation from the person who is manufacturing to you, the dealer, then to government and the tax, of course, taxman? This is URA. How do you do all this documentation in between? Because I think this is where also we see prices escalating of the cars because of the documentation issues that are occurring between URA and the dealers and then the manufacturer. How do you handle the documentation and how is the framework currently?
One thing I must applaud the URA for is that they have adopted a digitalized formation of work. Okay, so there is not much paperwork lingering around and trying to exchange hands, no. If you've had a chance to interact with the SCUDA system that they use, pretty much most of it is online. Okay, so you upload soft copies of your documents, these are scanned, verified, whatever, and then URA is able to process your documentation still online. They've gone ahead, the URA is trying to empower the end user, trying to empower the customer, the owner of the TIN number, because you do understand that to own or purchase or transact on an asset in Uganda, and by asset I'm referring to motor vehicles, you must have a TIN number. Yeah. So even you as the client are now informed of the entire documentation flow. When your documents are, let's say for example, if you want to clear a car, let's say a dealer wants to clear a car, they have to lodge for an assessment in the SCUDA World system. That comes to your email. You can print it at your convenience, go to your bank, make the payments. The systems between the banks and URA are already interconnected, so as soon as you make, URA recognizes it, your entry moves to the next level. So basically, the documentation back and forth that we had back in the day is slowly waning out, okay? URA, and kudos to the management, the embrace of technology and digitalization in the execution of their role has streamlined greatly and improved, and let alone improved efficiency by cutting on costs, especially that was incurred at the point of documentation or through documentation at large.
Wow, interesting. Good shot there from URA. Let's talk about, before we go into the break, when you look at this new form of taxation that looks at all the dynamics and then says, okay, we have these guidelines and so on. What do you think would have been the best thing for URA to do? Because at the end of the day, URA, like I mentioned in the first place, they're looking for revenue. And this revenue in the end is translated into services in the society. So you don't put all the blame on them. But maybe they could have done it differently. What do you think, instead of having this change in taxation formats or valuation of taxes, URA should have done?
I think URA, like every other tax body around the world, is bound by the canons of taxation. And some of those state it should be fair, it should be equitable, name it. My opinion is that in taxation, because everybody who's buying a car is contributing to the tax pool of the country. Every car you see on the road, let alone, and let me show you how cars contribute to the tax pool. One, when you're buying that car, you pay about, let's say if your car is between 0 to 5 years, from 15 years. And that I mean 2013 2008 to 2013. you pay about 105% of the value of that car in taxes. Every time you are buying fuel, you are contributing to the tax base. Every time you buy a spare part, you are contributing to the tax base. Every time you buy a lubricant, you're contributing to the tax base. When you go to a car wash, these car washes pay income tax, withholding tax, name it. When you go to the showrooms for these mechanics or whatever, Victoria Motors, Toyota, whatever, all those are paying taxes. So you look at the symbiosis, the synergy around the tax base of a vehicle, one vehicle, and look at all the alternate channels that come through it. You do find that cars are an everyday contributor to the tax regime of this country. What I would still advise, what I would ask our brothers and sisters at the URA is that let us not make this so difficult, because let us not look at only the first point of payment, that, okay, how much are we getting from this first point of payment? Look at the recurring contribution that every car on the road in this country makes, and use that as a basis for the valuation at the first point of entry. And again, along the principles of fairness and equity in taxation.
Wow, interesting. We're going to talk about the issue of taxing a little bit more in a different dimension. Government is planning to introduce a new number plate, which will require every motorist to pay at least $735,000 to acquire that number plate. Now, that's, of course, addressing your issue of which end should the taxes actually be collected at. But also, there is, starting the 1st of July, 2023, it's always in July that these things come up. We're going to see the end of the regime of cars that are older than 15 years in Uganda. This is not the first time it's happening. In 2018, the same law was introduced, but it was at least 9 years. That was the age limit for cars. Now they're introducing a new one, which is a bit more relaxed, but still more stringent compared to what we see on the roads here in Uganda. We see cars of 1991 and cars of 1990 and 86 sometimes. And we currently want to phase out those. What do you think is going to be the impact, first of all, on the road users or future road users like me who are looking up to drive a car one day, and even you, the car dealers? What's the impact of this on your business? My name is Anthony, and you're watching Smart24 TV. This is The Point. We are taking a very short break, and we return shortly.